What's up, family? Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about how religion poisons everything, about why God is not great. And of course, for those of you who are already in the know, we're going to be pulling a little bit from Christopher Hitchens' iconic work of the same title. So before we jump into this, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit that alert notification bell, consider connecting to this community or supporting this channel in any way that makes sense for you, and check out our merch because we do have some dope merch. And I just realized that I have a few books in view, so I might as well call those out as well. I'll start with my newest book, which you should see on this side. Christ Held Up. That one is absolutely for sale right now, almost everywhere where books are sold, but the easiest place where you can find it is on Amazon. And it's a great little book about why Jesus hasn't come back yet. And I do take a very graceful approach to the topic, and I think you will enjoy the read. That little thick book next to it, I don't know if I can get my hand there. Yep, there we go. Memphis. That's my first novel. I'm actually working on part 2 of that novel now. It's gonna be long, but if you're into epic fiction, if you're into a little bit of political mystery, political intrigue, with a little bit of science fiction in it as well, check it out. And then on this side, there's my wife's first book, which is called Words of a Shattered Mind. It's a book of poetry. If you love the art of poetry, pick it up. All right, so are y'all ready to jump into this conversation? Are y'all ready to talk about how religion poisons everything? All right, so let's jump into these notes. Christopher Hitchens' God is Not Great, How Religion Poisons Everything, offers a vehement critique of religion and its impact across various dimensions of society. We're going to walk through a summary, a detailed summary of some of the main points highlighted in the book. The first one that I wanted to hit is religion as a source of conflict and violence. Hitchens provides a thorough examination of how religions have fueled wars, terrorism, and general social unrest. He draws on historical events such as the Crusades, the partition of India, and contemporary conflicts in the Middle East to illustrate his point. He argues that religion often promotes tribalism and sectarianism, leading to violence and division. And this is one of the things that I do try to point out to people, that when you are dealing with tribalism and sectarianism, it is very hard to separate those phenomenons from superstitious or religious superstition. So typically, if there is tribalism, there's almost always some form of religious superstition at work to enforce that tribalism. All right, but he doesn't stop there. He argues that religion often, or he gives an analysis of religion as a source of conflict and violence, and makes this really a central theme in his book. He argues that religion is not merely a private spiritual experience, but a potent socio-political force that has historically contributed to wars, terrorism, and societal divisions. And so we're going to further break that point down. But I did want to highlight, because I've made it a point to highlight this as well, is that he's spot on when he says that religion is not a private experience. This is not some private spiritual experience. Religion is a social phenomenon, which means, if you are sincere about your religion, which I think I've talked about in one of my recent videos, that just because someone describes themselves as religious does not mean that they are religious. Just because someone describes themselves as affiliated with a religion does not mean that they are religious. Religious deals with behavior, not just belief. Otherwise, you wouldn't need another word. You have a belief. You don't have a religion. You have a belief. Religion is when you have determined to do something about that belief. All right. And it typically goes beyond just doing something in your private life, because then it's just a routine. You know, it's when you're committed to doing something with other people. And here's the real reason why it's not a private belief, because this belief then dictates not only how you view other people, but also how you treat other people, which is why he calls it a potent socio-political force. And that's this one is it's often odd to me that we don't realize the connection between religion and politics, but that's a whole nother other conversation. Okay, so to kind of provide some historical context here, he gives us the Crusades. He highlights the Crusades as one of the most blatant examples of religiously motivated violence. Spanning several centuries, these military campaigns were sanctioned by the Roman Catholic Church with the proclaimed intent of recapturing Jerusalem and the Holy Land from Muslim control. That's kind of still a thing today, you know? The Crusades were marked by extreme violence on both sides, including massacres of civilians and the plundering of cities, driven by religious fervor and promises of eternal salvation. But he goes further. We don't have to just use the blatant issues. Just let's use some of the things that some people don't talk about, such as the partition of India in 1947 that led to one of the largest mass migrations in human history, accompanied by horrific communal violence between Hindus and Muslims. Hitchens points to the role of religious identity in fueling the communal tensions that erupted into violence, resulting in the death and displacement of millions. The legacy of partition continues to influence Hindu Muslim relations in South Asia, underscoring the long term impact of religious conflict. But then there's also contemporary conflicts in the Middle East. We're dealing with that, literally now. Hitchens discusses various conflicts, emphasizing how religious sectarianism has been a significant factor in ongoing violence. For instance, the Israeli Palestinian conflict, while also territorial, is exacerbated by religious differences. Similarly, the sectarian violence in Iraq post 2003 invasion illustrates how Sunni and Shia divisions have led to prolonged violence and unrest. And then, let us not forget that after September 11th, the war in Iraq definitely got marketed as a war between Christians and Muslims. All right. But of course, it goes on, which we've kind of hit here a little bit about this idea of tribalism and sectarianism. Hitchens argues that religion often promotes an us versus them mentality. And that's not just religion against other religions or religions against other worlds, but even religious groups against other religious groups, such as denominations. And so, like, even among within Christians, is Baptist and Methodist, us versus them, Pentecostals. Don't be one of them charismatics. Don't be one of them fundamentals. Don't be one of them evangelicals. It's literally division all the way down. I don't understand how anybody, especially when it comes to Christianity, I don't understand how anybody ever thought that this religion has any modicum of unity when there is no unity among the believers themselves. Hell, there's not even any unity in the book. All right, so um, but yeah, this worldview categorizes people based on religious identity, often leading to prejudice, dehumanization of the other, and ultimately violence. The psychological mechanism of in-group favoritism and out-group hostility, which are exacerbated by religious ideologies, leads to social division and conflict. You know. Hitchens challenges the notion that religion inherently promotes peace and moral values. By drawing on historical and contemporary examples, he demonstrates that religion can also be a source of aggression and division, and in many times it has been. You want to see somebody get angry at somebody, watch it be a religious issue. The majority of issues, if someone can do, it could be something that annoys us or something that we don't like. And in most cases, we can get right over it really quick. But when it comes to religion, you can do something that has absolutely nothing to do with anybody else, and your life can be threatened for it or even taken away in many countries. This is not to say that all religious adherents are violent, but rather that religion as a system can be exploited or interpreted in ways that justify violence and conflict. And that needs to be something that we wrestle with. Any system that can be used to justify violence and conflict we need to we need to sincerely interrogate those systems and the utility of them. Moreover, he also critiques the idea that moral and ethical behavior requires a religious basis, pointing out that secular ideologies and non-religious moral philosophies can and do promote peaceful coexistence and ethical behaviors without the divisive aspects of religious doctrines. Because, of course, if someone doesn't believe in your imaginary friend, you're smart enough to just be like, well, hey, that's their right. You get it? All right, so of course, he uses these examples to illustrate a broader pattern where religion, rather than simply being a personal spiritual experience, has significant social implications that can include exasperating or justifying conflict. His analysis calls for a critical examination of how these beliefs are intertwined with political and social identities and how this intersection leads to violence and division. But he doesn't just deal with the violence aspect. He moves on to deal with an aspect that's highly important to me, and that's the suppression of science and intellectual progress. Hitchens discusses numerous instances where religious institutions and beliefs have hindered scientific progress. And I think we can all probably think of a few, but as well as intellectual freedom. He points to the Catholic Church's historical resistance to the heliocentric theory proposed by Galileo, the opposition to Darwin's theory of evolution, and contemporary debates over stem cell research, which is major. Hitchens contends that religion is not only incompatible with science, but actively opposes it. And it's surprising to me that he had to be one of the few people willing to call that out. And I often tell people that it was Hitchens' passion and Christians' reaction to his passion was one of the first things that truly softened my heart towards atheists. Because when I heard this man speak, all I heard was a concern for people, a very real human concern for other people. And if we do have that concern, then we also need to recognize that science is not just something that some people are interested in. Science is a major fundamental building block of progress for us. And we need to stop pretending that religion and science can somehow be good bedfellows or that they somehow work together. No, they do not. Religion is often actively, vehemently, and even violently opposing scientific progress. It's gotten so bad that many people still have this illusion that there is a scientific world and then there is this religious world that can't be investigated by science. If it can't be investigated by science, that means it can't be investigated by natural means, which also means that it can't be investigated by natural beings. So then what the fuck are we talking about after that? So we really need to stop letting them get away with that argument. We need to get as clear as possible when it comes to these things that religion has not proven itself to be a valid way of knowing anything, but it has proven itself to be a valid way of justifying violence. Okay? All right. So, yikes. So he critiques religion's impact on science and intellectual progress. He argues that religious institutions and doctrines have historically obstructed scientific inquiry and hindered the advancement of knowledge. Let's kind of break this down. We've already mentioned Galileo. Now, Galileo was an Italian astronomer, championed the heliocentric model, which posits that the Earth and planets revolve around the sun. This theory was controversial because it contradicted the prevailing geocentric model supported by the Catholic Church, which placed Earth at the center of the universe. All right, now, to be clear, this was not the first time that the heliocentric model had been posited, but this is the first time that it had been promoted in Europe while Europe was under Roman Catholic domination. You have to make those things clear because there are earlier groups who had already begun to kind of say, oh, no, I think we might revolve around it. And a lot of groups that that most people don't want to give credit for, but we'll talk about that in another video as well. All right. This theory was controversial because it contradicted the prevailing model of the Catholic Church, which placed Earth at the center of the universe. The Catholic Church, viewing the heliocentric theory as heretical, subjected Galileo to an inquisition and placed him under house arrest. This episode is often cited as a classic example of religious dogma stemming scientific progress. But then the Galileo affair also symbolizes the tension between emerging scientific discoveries and established religious doctrines. It illustrates how religious authority can suppress intellectual freedom and discourage questioning of accepted beliefs. Now, mind you, I live in an area that is a part of what is nominally called the Black Belt and has been usurped as the Bible Belt. And living in this area like this, almost everything that is new and scientific is often, or new in science, is often combated or thrown or just kind of like brushed off as that's just them playing God. See, these are the side effects of a people believing that we live in a perfect world that has been perfectly crafted for us. Then they believe that not only are we incapable of managing it, but by even attempting to manage the world that we live in, we are somehow offending their religious sensibilities. And then, therefore, many of them will group up to try to resist that progress. In America, we call them conservatives. And that's the whole idea of conservatism, of traditionalism, is to conserve the way things are, to preserve the way things are, to keep things the same so that we can keep daddy proud. You know, it's just me talking. Hoi. All right. So then also there was Charles Darwin's theory of evolution, which was introduced in the 19th century, which proposed that species evolved over time through natural selection. This theory challenged the biblical creation story that species were individually created by God. Many religious groups, particularly within Christian fundamentalism, vehemently opposed evolution, regarding it as contradictory to the literal interpretation of Scripture. This opposition persists today with debates over teaching evolution in schools, highlighting ongoing conflicts between science and religion. And again, this also demonstrates that religion is actively opposing science. Actively. Religion is saying, anything that science says that our books do not say is automatically wrong, and is taking it as far as to say then our children should not learn that. And I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but in this country there is a crisis when it comes to education and the hard sciences and maths. And a major part of that is because of religious indoctrination. You know, I know everybody want to celebrate the teachers, but I'm telling you, man, I wonder, do you know how many of your teachers are secretly proselytizing your children? This is one of the reasons my teachers loved me so much, because I was a good Christian. You ought to take a look into how many science teachers in this country don't actually believe in science. We really need to yes, I am an advocate. Teachers need better pay. I 100% agree with that. But I also believe that we need better teachers. And this is coming from someone who made straight A's all through school. You know, my teachers liked me. I didn't like them that much. That's a whole nother other conversation. And I'm not alone in that. Neil deGrasse Tyson felt the same way. So I feel good. We're on the bandwagon together. All right. And then, of course, the resistance of evolutionary biology showcases how religious beliefs can influence educational policies and restrict scientific discourse within public institutions. And mind you, that's what it is. It's not a rejection of Charles Darwin. It's not even a rejection of evolution. It's the broader impact is it's a rejection of evolutionary biology. This is not just how we understand something that happened, you know, millions and millions of years, billions of years ago. This is our way of understanding ourselves. And this is what religion is robbing people of happily. You know, like the Catholic Church is a great case study of how religion does evolve and that it can contemporize. That's beautiful. Sure. But the problem is it tends to do it 200 to 2,000 years later than the rest of the world. We can't afford those delays anymore. And I'm gonna hit that. I'm gonna hit that a little bit more in another section. Um, and then of course the contemporary debates over stem cell research, which stem cell research offering potential treatments for a variety of diseases raises ethical concerns about the use of embryonic stem cells. The debate centers around the moral status of human embryos. Religious influence, many religious organizations oppose embryonic stem cell research, equating it with the destruction of human life. This stance has influenced policymaking, leading to restrictions and funding limitations for such research in several countries. We can't we can't even heal ourselves because of religion. We can't improve the quality of our own lives because of religion. Hitchens points out that religious-based opposition to stem cell research impedes the potential for medical breakthroughs and illustrates a broader pattern of religious institutions resisting scientific endeavors that conflict with their doctrines. And just to be fair, like if you have a religious belief, you have a religious doctrine, then just don't go to that scientist. Don't use that. Because that's how a private and a personally held belief is supposed to work. You don't want an abortion? Don't get one. You don't believe in gay marriage? Don't marry gay. You know what I'm saying? Adults know these things. Like, and I get it. We want to be careful not to dehumanize people who still are in that belief system. But at the same time, we need to clearly call out immaturity and dehumanizing behaviors. And wanting to force other people to live by your beliefs is immature. Yay, I did the hard T there. It's immature, you know? Sorry, my mind does that. You get what you get. All right, so Hitchens contends that these examples are not isolated incidents, but part of a broader historical pattern where religious institutions have resisted scientific truths that challenge their theological frameworks. He argues that religion, by its very nature, promotes a fixed worldview that is often incompatible with the changing evidence-based nature of scientific understanding. And that's the thing where religion gets to throw rocks and hide its hands. It absolutely advocates a fixed worldview while giving itself the grace to evolve while never admitting that it evolved. It's like, oh no, we were always against slavery. What the fuck? Stop that. All right. He further suggested that this resistance to science reflects a fundamental fear within religious ideology of losing authority and control over societal beliefs and moral norms. This further highlights that these are not private beliefs. This dynamic, according to Hitchens, not only stifles intellectual progress, but also harms societal well-being by holding back advancements in knowledge and technology that can improve human life. Hitchens uses these points to build a case that religion has been a recurrent antagonist to scientific progress throughout history, often prioritizing doctrinal fidelity over empirical truth and intellectual exploration. This critique is intended to challenge his readers to reconsider the role of religion in public life and its impact on the pursuit of knowledge. Now, I went through a lot. There's three other points, and I'm going to be a little more brief with those. But I hope you're getting something out of this. He also hits moral and ethical failings of religion, which I've talked about at great extent, to great lengths on this channel. Contrary to popular belief that religion is the source of moral and ethical guidelines, Hitchens argues that it often perpetuates moral wrongs. He cites the religious justification for slavery, the subjugation of women, and the persecution of homosexuals as examples where religious doctrines have been on the wrong side of morality over and over again. He challenges the reader to consider the ethical implications of unquestioningly following religious texts that are out of step with contemporary moral understanding. Which I think the fact that we have a moral understanding that differs than what is in the Bible or any other religious book automatically indicates that morality is something entirely separate from religion. The only way to see religion as a beacon of morality is to completely ignore that it has served as the foundation of justification of dehumanizing others historically. When it comes to health, medicine, and harm, Hitchens criticizes religious doctrines that interfere with public health policies. Examples include the Catholic Church's stance against condom use, which has impeded HIV and AIDS prevention efforts in Africa, and some religious groups' opposition to vaccinations and medical treatments deemed unacceptable by their beliefs. He argues that such positive positions have direct detrimental impacts on health outcomes. And I will take it a step further. It also impacts financial outcomes, which further exasperates health issues. And in this case, I'm so glad that he highlighted the condom issue. And I know he doesn't have a lot of insight into the African American community, but I want to say that this is not just an issue in Africa. This is an issue here too. And I'm not just talking about from the age points, from the age perspective. Do you know how many good Christian women refuse to use condoms for premarital sex? You know, it's weird, right? Do the premarital sex, but won't use the condom because to them, using the condom is a greater offense. You know, and so you have no idea how much poverty could have been alleviated by proper information about contraceptives in my community. And now we have people who have put themselves into holes that are nearly impossible to dig themselves out of, while at the same time still having a very magical, fantastical view of the world around them and that God is someday going to just fix it for them. These are real issues, you know? See, it's not just the fact that people believe something that is not true. That everybody believes something that's not true. I'm almost positive. But this is deeper than that. These people are spreading these beliefs like a cancer into our cultures, into our policies, into legislation, into our education, into our schools. This is severely robbing people of their quality of life in ways that they are not yet sharp enough to even be able to interrogate for themselves. And we should have some compassion for that. Sorry. The last one that he hits, or that I'm going to hit, he hits more. He draws parallels between religious governance and totalitarian regimes, noting that both systems thrive on absolute authority and often suppress dissenting voices. He discusses how religious leaders demand unquestioning faith from their followers, suppressing freedom of thought and expression in the process. And to be clear, you cannot value democracy while also valuing any religion that has a king who is above all kings. One of these things is not like the other. Totalitarian religion is a threat to democracy. It is the reason we do not have democracy yet in this country. He discusses how religious leaders, said that. Hitchens' work is polemical, intended to provoke thought and debate about the role of religion in modern society. He uses a mix of historical analysis, philosophical inquiry, and personal observation to argue that humanity would be better off without religion. His book is a call for a more secular world where science and reason prevail over superstition and dogma. And I found the book to be an absolutely fascinating read, refreshing, but I also found Christopher Hitchens to be incredibly refreshing for me. I know people have different opinions, and that was an attachment I developed while I was a pastor. Even listening to to Hitchens as a pastor, I didn't change my beliefs after that. I didn't deconstruct. I wanted to be a better Christian. You know, that's what I wanted. I wanted to make sure that I wasn't like the Christians that Hitchens was talking about. And in a very real way, that may have set me on the course to finally find my way out. I know a lot of times when people speak strongly of things, we have a misunderstanding of immediately making it villainous. But heroes are passionate too. And Christopher Hitchens, for me, is one of those people that I can say is a personal hero. And I don't have that many white personal heroes. I'll be honest with you. Like Abraham Lincoln don't make my list. He makes a lot of other folks' lists. He don't make mine. The majority of my personal heroes are people who are activists, are people who were, yeah, a lot of them were nationalists, black nationalists for sure. But I think when people give themselves the freedom to honestly interrogate the African American situation, then you kind of see that anything less than black nationalism outside of globalism is a slap in the face. It says, we know we brought you over here against your own court, against your own will, but we're still going to deprive you of the right to self-govern, self-determine, and live by laws that you set for yourself. Which the crazy consequences of that is that millions of black people in this country are in prison for violating laws that they never agreed to. That's why I say democracy has not gotten here yet. Because that's not how democracy works. But anyway, this was a great conversation. If you haven't read Christopher Hitchens' book, go check it out. It's out there. You don't have to agree with everything he says. I don't agree with most of the things that I read. Actually, I don't think there's anybody that I've ever met that I agree with 100% of what they say. But I kind of want to encourage people to break the habit of needing to agree to learn. Like that's weird to me. Like if you're only going to read the books by people that you agree with, then you're not actually learning anything new. You are enforcing your own personal echo chamber. And I don't do that. I read a little bit of everything. But I hope you all have enjoyed this. Um, I could probably talk about Hitchens all day long. And I think this is the first time I've ever said that he's one of my personal heroes. And that's why I'm spending a little time there on that thought because it's messing with my brain a little bit. But he really was just because he spoke so passionately, he spoke so strongly, and he spoke accurately. Again, which is why after, witnessing him, debating or witnessing him sharing his thoughts so passionately, I didn't feel offended. I did feel indignant about the behavior of other Christians. Like kind of some of the way I think years ago, who was it? It may have been Richard Dawkins who was reading emails from Christians. And just when I was a believer, I was never that type of person, you know. And I realize now that it was never Christianity who made me who I was. I've always been me. All right, I was supposed to stop talking like 10 minutes ago. I'm officially done. If you haven't already, like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit that alert notification bell. Yeah. consider supporting the content, the channel, or the community in whatever way that makes sense for you. And check out our merch. And then go to Amazon and check out our books as well. All right, that's all I got. I love y'all, man. Until next time, keep rising, stay progressive, and stay beautiful if you can. I'll holla.